everybody, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. You found your way over to the Modest Audiophile channel, and I'm glad you did, because today we're going to talk about 6 free ways that we can maximize or improve your overall listening experience with your hi-fi system in your listening room. I said free. All of them are free except for one, which is very inexpensive. And if you stick around long enough, I do have definitely a free way for a bonus number 7 at the end. Practical experience, it does work. Maybe a little silly, but if you make it to the end, I'll explain what I'm talking about then. Way number 1 is to optimize your speaker and your listening position and relation to each other. So I form a equilateral triangle. This seems to be, I guess, an accepted way that everybody should listen to their speakers. Meaning that in my listening room, and I may have a video here where I'll superimpose this on top, but in my listening room, my speakers are 9 feet apart, and I sit 9 feet away in this chair that I roll back in between the speakers. More on my chair in a little bit. But yes, try to get as close as you possibly can to that equilateral triangle. 9 feet apart on the speakers and you being 9 feet away. Or in your case, it might be 10 feet or 7 feet or 5 feet or a desktop, whatever it is, but try to create that equilateral triangle. If your speakers are rear ported like mine are, then you want to get these things away from the wall. Most speakers want to be away from the wall. If they're too close, you're going to create a bass trap, or just an area where the low frequencies are gathering. Your bass is going to sound muddy, it's going to sound woolly, it's just going to be too much bass as well. Now, if you got speakers in which you're trying to improve the overall bass, maybe you want to push those closer to the wall, but for today's purposes, ported speakers, move them away from the wall by about 2 to 3 feet. And again, I'll show you with mine. Mine are dual rear ported, and I move them away 3 feet away from my back wall. Also, keep them away from the corners as well if you can. Again, you might not be able to, depending on what your listening room looks like or how it's laid out. But if you can, try to move these things away from the wall, at least while you're listening to your music. If you have a multi-purpose room and the family is gathering for another time, or you're not listening to your speakers, yeah, push them back against the wall when you're not in use. But when you're going to be listening to your music, put them again back away from the wall. What I've done in previous rooms, I put a little bit of painter's tape, actually tape like this, where I actually have a couple pieces taped to the floor right now, so I know when I can move my speakers back where I found the sweet spot. Let's talk about tweeter height, meaning the tweeter on your speakers in relation to your overall ear. When I'm in my sitting position, I try to level my tweeters just below my ear. It works for me, and it seems to be the prevailing way that most people try to do it as well. What I will say about this is that once you found that sweet spot in your chair, again, I have this desk chair that I will roll back in between my speakers when I'm listening, and I can go up and down in my chair. Well, I had it all locked in on a previous chair. A couple months ago, I bought a new chair, and I brought it down to the same level that I always did. Chairs were different, the levels were different. For about an hour or so, I'm like, what the heck is wrong with my ears today? I'm not hearing my music in the way in which I'm accustomed to. Maybe I had a cold or something, I wasn't sure. Idiot me, well, I brought the chair level to the same as what the previous chair was, but it wasn't the same level. So once again, I made sure that I looked at the tweeter and I adjusted my new chair accordingly, and what do you know? Everything came back into focus, listening focus. So yes, check the tweeter level with your ears. All right, the last thing regarding speakers is toe-in. What the heck does toe-in mean? When I first got in this hobby, I had no clue what toe-in was. I was thinking all of these strange things, but toe-in, really, it's the speaker angle in relation to you. So for instance, if you want to get that laser sharp image, you spent all the money on a killer audiophile record, you got your setup all taken care of, you got the speakers that you want, you got the tweeter height set up, but you're not getting that killer image that everyone's talking to you about. Well, you want to make sure that the drivers on the speakers are pointed at your listening position. In my case, what I try and do when I'm sitting in between my speakers is, for the right speaker, for this ear, I want to have the drivers pointed somewhere between my ear and my shoulder. That's where I start, somewhere in there, and then I will dial them in accordingly to make sure that I'm getting the best image I possibly can out of my record or my file or whatever it may wind up being, to get the best overall image, tow those speakers in to where your sweet spot is. And again, it should be somewhere between your ear and your shoulder, at least for me. Way number 2 is to manage room acoustics. What do I mean about that? Well, try to get rid of as many of those reflective surfaces that you possibly can in your room. So if your room is filled with hardwood floor or concrete walls, right, a lot of reflective surfaces, you're going to have those sound waves bouncing all over the place, and it's going to create echoes and all this stuff, and that image is just going to get blurred. So free ways. I'm not one, or I haven't as of yet, spent any money on acoustic paneling or any room treatments, but some common sense may help you. And I didn't know all of this when I first started. Certainly the point that I'll start with first. So if you've noticed, between my speakers, I've got a TV. And when I'm listening to my music, at first I never covered that TV. You notice I've got a fleece blanket on it now. And that is to absorb any sound waves that I was getting. What I noticed was, once I put that fleece blanket over my reflective surface of a widescreen TV, once I put that covering on there, my center image really firmed up. So if I was listening to some music and the vocals were centered, locked in, it really helped me with that. I didn't have to go out and spend any money. I already had the blanket, so I just put it over my TV. Other things to think about. So not every room is equal. They're all odd shaped and they're all made with different materials. Prevailing thought is the more hard surfaces you have, the more difficult it is to try to get that really good sound quality. So for instance, if you've got a hardwood floor or a linoleum floor, concrete floor, whatever it is, you may want to try to cover that up a little bit. In this case, I've got some hardwood flooring, and I've covered the center, at least the center of my listening space, with a rug. It helps out tremendously. Any windows, like I have a window over here, which is behind me, that could reflect some of those sound waves as well. So pull a curtain down. If you don't have a curtain, put a t-shirt over it, whatever it is, but try to cover as many reflective surfaces as you can. And that should help firm up your overall image. Way number 3 is to ensure clean connections. What do I mean about that? Well, a lot of people are using old RCA cables when they're getting into this hobby. They've had RCA cables kicking around for decades. Make sure they're clean. Make sure there's no gunk on them. Make sure that when you pulled them out of that box, a piece of gum wasn't attached to it, some grime, whatever it is. Clean those connectors as best as you can. Maybe a little bit of rubbing alcohol. And then when you seat them in its jack, make sure they're snug and secure. Also, if I might add, if you have a removable head shell on your turntable, you may want to take that off every once in a while, look at the connectors, get a Q-tip with that rubbing alcohol and clean that out. Have it dry and then connect those back up. Just making sure that there's nothing in between the connections when you want to maximize your overall listening experience. Cable management. Does your cables behind your hi-fi system look like this? Mine used to, or close enough to it. So a couple things about cable management. One, common sense is to try to keep them clean so when you're swapping out components, you know where the heck the interconnects are. You don't have to go chasing through a rat's nest to try to find the right RCA cables to go to the right component or the right power cable to go to the right component. Makes things a lot easier. So what I'll do is I'll just go buy some zip ties and I will keep my interconnects definitely separated from my power cable. Why? Because if you hear a hum within your system, that low frequency, low cycle hum, if you're a single coil guitar player, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're hearing it come out of your hi-fi system, it can be very aggravating and you think you've done everything right, but you don't know where that hum is coming from. Most cases, it's probably because your power cables are crossed up or laying on top of your interconnects. So your RCA cables are probably lying right on top of your power cables. If they have to be touching, try to make them at a 90-degree angle, if at all. But try to separate them all together. And again, with some zip ties, try to keep them separate. And that should take care of that low cycle hum. I know it can be very aggravating. Hey everybody, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for coming on by today. I appreciate it. If this is your first time here, take a look around. I bet you might find something else that you like. If you have been here before and you have come back for more, a super heartfelt thank you from me to you. If you like this type of content, yeah, go down there and hit like. Don't be shy. And if you want to support the channel further but don't want to spend any money, then go down there and hit subscribe. You can always take it away later, but in the meantime, it will really help the channel out. Thank you so much. Let's get back to some more free ways to help maximize your listening experience. Way number 4 is isolation from vibration. Well, what do I mean about that? Well, vibration is bad, is the enemy, especially for a turntable or a record player. Let me ask you a question. If you are just getting into this hobby, or you're getting back into this hobby from a long time ago, and you got a new turntable as a gift, or you bought one yourself, and you got some nice powered speakers that are going with it, or conventional speakers that are not powered, but you got them set on the same surface. So you put your record player on the surface, and then you put your speakers on the same surface. If you've done that, you may want to consider separating them. Speakers are literally vibrating, putting vibrations into that surface and up through the turntable, thus reducing the overall listening experience that you're trying to chase in the first place. So at the very minimum, take those speakers and put them onto a different surface. May you consider putting them onto an inexpensive speaker stand. That might be the best. And if you do put them on a speaker stand, if you have carpeting in that room, then you may want to get those feet that have, I'll try and put a picture here, but most speaker stands will have those spike feet that will go right into the carpet and into the flooring below it to try to deaden the vibrations or reduce the overall vibrations. If you have hardwood floors like I do, then you certainly don't want those spiked feet to go directly onto the hardwood floors. No, you may want to consider getting a disc like this, where you put these spikes right on top, and then obviously this is separating it from the hardwood floor. Well, what about isolation feet in general, say for your turntable? Well, not everybody has a lot of money to go out there and spend specifically on isolation feet, which can run hundreds of dollars per foot on your turntable. I would suggest looking at alternatives though. So for instance, go to your hardware store, pick up those felt discs that you would put underneath a chair to slide on a hardwood floor. That would be better than nothing. Or look for some like rubber gaskets or something like that to again separate the turntable from the hardwood surface. Cork is another good example of a good buffer to help reduce overall vibrations. So those are all very inexpensive ways that you can try to reduce those going into your turntable or other components as well. One more thing regarding vibrations. Consider taking the cover off of your turntable when you are listening to music. I personally will take my cover off of my turntable and put it onto the side when I'm listening to records. I didn't always do this. I don't know, maybe I started doing this about 4 or 5 years ago. Prior to that, I would either keep the record cover open, which was catching all of those vibrations in my room and then putting the vibrations back into the record player, or I would close it and it was still creating vibrations and it would muddy the sound a little bit. So for me, in my listening room, while I'm listening to the music, I'll take the cover off because it slides right off, and I'll put it off to the side, listen to my records. When I'm done listening, I'll put the cover back on. And that will help tremendously by getting a much more laser sharp image within your soundstage. So consider taking the cover off of your record player entirely when you're listening to it. Way number 5 is clean records and the files that you're listening to if you're listening to digital music. So let's talk digital first. If you are listening to digital music through your new DAC that you're all excited that you got, and you're listening to MP3 files, this could be a rat hole, but generally speaking, I would say you may want to consider listening to a high resolution format. Meaning instead of an MP3 file, you may want to listen to a FLAC file, or again, a higher resolution file. So either listen to 16-bit 44K, which is CD quality, or listen to a high-res file, which would be a 24-bit 96K or 192K, or a DSD file. So again, if you spent all the money on a DAC already, you may want to consider just upgrading the type of music file that you're putting on that, okay? And as it pertains to vinyl records, yes, you want to keep them clean. Not everybody can go out there and get an ultrasonic cleaner or whatever type of cleaner. I understand that. If you're going to be in this hobby for a long time, and you're going to invest a lot of money into your records, you may want to consider it. But in the meantime, at least use some tools that will help mitigate the snap, crackle, and pops. So for instance, even brand new records aren't going to be the cleanest things in the world. Record pressing plants are not necessarily a very clean environment. So at the bare minimum, yes, do a dry clean. So put the record on, spin the record while the record's spinning, put a brush on it, have a couple revolutions, and pick up all the lint and dust. After that, if you have one of these very inexpensive, I don't know, you probably get one of these from $5, $10, an anti-static brush. I always put this on afterwards, let it go around about 3 or 4 times, and then drop the needle. And another thing, yes, try to clean that needle every once in a while too, especially after a dirty record. And way number 6 is something I literally started doing just a few weeks ago on the advice of a buddy of mine who's been in this hobby less time than I have, but it works. So let me ask you this. You've set some time aside for yourself. You got that great new record from whatever record company you brought in, or you went to the brick and mortar and you've set some time aside for yourself. You've cleaned the record. You've found your favorite beverage. You drop the needle, you sit down in your listening experience, and you're going, yeah, it sounds good, but I expected more. But by the time you get to the second side, wow, this sounds a lot better. Oh, what did they do wrong on the first side of the record? The second side sounds so much better. They must have done something wrong at the pressing plant. That may be the case, but chances are it's not. Have you found that happens to be the case from time to time, where you think the second side of the record sounds better than the first side? And maybe you're going, well, it just takes my ears a little bit longer to get accustomed to your listening space or the sound stage. Yep, that could be a reason too. What might be the reason is that your Phono preamp with those nice Genalex tubes or whatever other tubes you got going on, or just the capacitors in general, you just flipped the switch on right when you started the record and you didn't let that piece of equipment warm up. Yeah, I was doing that. I was getting ready to sit down, turn on my equipment, and then 5 minutes later I'm listening to music, and the second side of the record always sounds better. Or I thought it was me. Maybe there's something wrong with my ears that day. Nope. A couple weeks ago I started turning on my components a half hour before I was going to listen to my music. And you know what? The first side sounds as good as the second side. All the time now. So think about turning on your components, then going to get your favorite beverage and getting everything ready. Let that run for about a half hour, then drop the needle on, and chances are it's going to sound as good as you hoped for, instead of waiting 30 minutes for it to sound better. I would also say that will work for your solid state stuff too. So for instance, if I'm going to turn on my Eversolo to listen to my digital files or to stream music, I'm going to turn that thing on a half hour earlier too and make sure that's getting warmed up so the electrons are moving as freely and as quickly as they need to maximize my overall listening experience. So that's that. All right. If you made it this far, thanks. I really appreciate it. What's the bonus number 7 way? Okay. But it works. It works, and I've been doing this for a long time. So again, you have set some time aside for yourself. You've done everything right. You got your favorite beverage. You're going to sit in your favorite listening chair and listen to your music. And it's not happening. But Mark, I turned all my equipment on a half hour earlier like you said, and it's still not happening. Now, let me ask you this. You have a cold? Is there a storm coming by? Is the outside air pressure changing? It just might be, and I know this sounds silly, but if you've ever flown in an aircraft and your ears started feeling pressurized, grab your nose, blow, and clear your ears. Pop your ears. Depressurize your ears. You know what happens? That sound stage just opens right up. It's amazing. I find myself doing that several times a week. And every time I do it, I'm getting the full effect of that image in that sound stage. So yeah, it's silly, I know. But again, if all else fails, try depressurizing your ears. Even if it's the middle of summer and you live near sea level, it will work. All right, everybody, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you. I hope one of these things maybe resonated with you and make you have a better listening experience in your listening room. That's it for today. Thank you so much, and I'll get back soon with another record review. Take care, everybody. Bye.